Good evening and welcome to the Town of Smyrna Beer Board meeting. Today is Monday, February the 7th at 5 p.m. And before we get started, I'd like to have everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. All right, any citizens' comments this evening? Okay. We'll move on to reviewing the approval of our minutes from our January 10th meeting. Board members, has everyone had a chance to review our last meeting minutes?
Yes. I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the January meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion approved. I don't believe we have any old business from our previous meeting, so we'll move right along to new business tonight. We have a few different hearings, revocation or suspension hearings.
Yes, before we get started, for everybody's benefit that haven't been here with us before, I'd like to go over somewhat of the procedure of what we're going to follow, and then some of the rules for the board and what your decisions may be once we've done each hearing. This will be essentially a mini trial. The board members will be serving as a judge. The rules of civil procedure and evidence do not apply, but we do ask that everyone remains respectful. I will call Detective Sergeant Elstrand to testify. He's going to testify on all of the cases. At any time, the board may ask any questions that you have. Once I have finished asking questions of the detective, then the owner or the owner's attorney will have an opportunity to ask any questions that they may have. After the owner's attorney or the owner has finished, there may be follow-up, and that can be by myself or by the board. After the officer has testified, that's the only witness that I intend on calling in each one of these cases. So we'll turn the floor over to the owner or the owner's attorney, and then they can call any witnesses that they would like to call. Of course, I would get a chance to ask questions after the owner or the attorney has finished, and also the board can ask questions at any time as well. Once testimony has been given for both sides, then we will offer a small closing, first by myself and then by the owner or the owner's attorney. Now, at the conclusion of the hearings tonight, what the board is going to have to determine is if alcohol was sold to someone under the age of 21. Every one of these cases, the allegation has been made that beer has been sold to a minor. If the board finds that beer was not sold to a minor, then the charge should be dismissed. If the board finds that beer was sold to a minor, then you can either revoke in full the beer permit of the establishment. That typically does not happen unless it's someone who's been a multiple offender, and as I'm aware, none of the individuals who are here tonight have been multiple offenders. The board can also suspend the beer permit up to 1 year. Typically, on someone who's coming for the first time, we would request that that suspension be for 2 weeks of their permit to sell beer. Our ordinances do allow, in lieu of suspension, that an individual can pay a civil penalty, and that penalty is up to $2,500. So it would be up to you guys to decide what, if any, penalty or punishment is put in place for each one of these cases. Ms. Swift, I would now turn it over to you to call the first case.
Okay, thanks. All right, our first hearing is permit 00568 by the Quickie Mart COVID-19 Market. Okay, if you'll please step up to the podium. And state your name, please.
Sharif, S-H-E-R-I-F.
You are the owner, is that
Yes, ma'am.
correct? Okay, Eric, what's What do we
If
need to review
He would have a
first?
seat here in the front row,
Okay.
and then we will proceed forward.
Okay, you can have a seat right here in the front row, and then we'll move forward. Thank you.
I would call Detective Sergeant Elstrand. Sir, if you would, please state your full name for the board,
My full name is Eric Cleet Elstrand.
and where are you currently employed?
I'm employed as a sergeant in the Criminal Investigations Division of the Smyrna Police.
And how long have you been so employed by the Smyrna Police Department?
I've worked for the Smyrna Police Department since January of 2003.
On or about November the 16th of 2021, did you have the opportunity to go in and see a sale at the Quickie Mart / COVID-19 market located at 250 North Lowry Street?
Yes, sir, I did.
And could you please explain to the board what happened?
Yes, using a confidential source, someone working for us, this person was age 20. We provided them with cash and gave them the instructions to go in and buy a alcoholic beverage. We also gave them the instructions, if they asked to see your ID card, show them your ID card. And we did this numerous times throughout the night and sent the confidential informant in there to attempt to purchase alcoholic beverages.
Is this store located within the town limits of Smyrna?
It is, sir.
And at the particular Quickie Mart, did they ask for ID?
No, sir.
Okay, I'm going to show you a photograph and ask you if you could please identify this for me.
Yes, sir, it's a peach margarita
And where did that come from?
that came from the Quickie Mart, purchased by our confidential source.
How did this picture come to be taken?
The picture, once the confidential source came out of the business, we had them get into a vehicle. They were debriefed on what happened. And then we took any remaining money and the evidence, in this case, the peach margarita, and before placing it into evidence bag, took a picture of it.
And do you know that drink there to contain alcohol?
Yes, sir.
And does someone to purchase that drink have to be 21 years of age?
Yes, sir.
Those would be my questions.
Any questions from the board?
When you said that you asked the informant to come out, when he came out with a drink, you had him say he got in a car and you debriefed him, was there any audio recording or anything of the informant inside of the location itself?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the board? No further questions from us.
Then we would turn it over to the owner for any questions that he may have of the officer.
Okay. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask the officer? No. Okay, Detective, I'm sorry.
You can have a seat. At this point, it would be appropriate for the owner to put on any defense that he so desires.
Sharif, if you'd like to step to the podium, if you have anything that you would like to say, and like Eric said, in your defense.
I don't have anything I can say, but I have some problem for my store because in that day I had the shift work in my store, but I had the brand for my store. I have the Marathon gas station, but this day the Marathon take off everything, like the internet, the cashier is down, everything is down, the system is down, and it's still down. The guys is work right now for that. We try fix it. We spend a lot of money for that, and when that happened, I had like trouble because the system is down. I can't work in the internet outside and inside. The both is not working. The system is down for everything. The cashier is not working too because when I work, the cashier asked me about the ID, and I bought the ID number and bought the date and year and everything, but I still get that manual because the cashier is down and the internet and the credit card machine outside or inside, the both is not working. I spent ton of money for that, and I fixed that right now like almost $30,000, and nobody helped me for that, like the landlord or like that, and that's it.
So you say your machine was down?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
the only thing you rely on then?
Yes, sir.
To check an ID?
Yes, sir, because the system, the old one, when I scan the beer, they ask me about the beer or cigarette. They ask me about the ID, and I put the date and months and year.
Sure.
Yeah, but when the system is down, they not ask me about that.
It doesn't ask you about it, but you know that you need
Yes,
to check
sir.
it.
Yes, sir. That is first day that the machine is down for this day. That is
Okay.
on purpose. I'm sorry.
Can we ask questions too?
Yes.
So, Sharif, thank you for that, but my concern is, going forward, internet's down, you know, purchase, or your point of sale's down, your employees, what are you going to instruct them to do in that scenario?
I try fix it, but I can't do that anything because that is when that is happening. That is afternoon. No companies work like this time, and I think when she's coming in my store, she's coming around 5 o'clock. Everything is down, and any company is closed.
So your employees looking at an ID, you don't have anything that's near your register that would
Usually
say
I
on or
would.
before this date, so they can look at an ID and
Yes.
see that that's correct, with or without your machine, internet, you know, that's still your responsibility to ensure that you are not selling to
Sure, but
minors.
this happened for same day. That is not happened before or after. That's same day.
Okay.
When she's coming. When I get the permit from here, I ask you ask me about that. I told you, the machine is asking me about the ID. But I remember already because I worked for a long time before the system is coming, like the scan, like that. I work and I ask every people for the ID. If he coming and goes, I ask him again for the ID.
Sharif, if I may, you were actually the cashier that day, were you not?
Yes, sir.
And when did you get your beer permit from the town of Smyrna?
That is in the October, I think.
So approximately 1 month prior to this thing, you were
Yes.
given the beer permit?
Yes, sir.
So, Sharif, I just got to ask to make sure I'm understanding, and so we can outline this for everyone. What are you going to do in the future if your internet is down? If you're not able to punch in the date, what are you going to do to prevent a sale
I
of beer
close the
to a
store.
minor?
I close the store and
So
go.
you will not sell beer because you can't ID, is that what you're saying?
I close because the system is down. Everybody use the card right now. Nobody use the cash. That is like 10% use the cash and 90% use the card. Apple Pay like that.
Any other questions from the board? Yes, yes.
So, just to clarify, what the chairperson is saying is, in this particular case, you did not request an ID. That's what is in the packet here. So you didn't ask to see the ID. Now, you're saying you didn't ask for it because you couldn't key it into the computer, but you can visually look at the ID with or
Sure.
without your computer system.
Sure.
So what are you going to do if your computer system is down?
I look for the ID anyway. Yeah. And I remember asking her for the ID, but she's already in the door. She's already outside.
So the ID should be checked before you sell the product.
Sure, yes.
Or just not sell anything that's have to be 21 that you need an ID for.
Yes, sir. The tobacco and beer now, over 21.
Yes. I mean, I'm hearing what you're saying is just not good enough for me. Because I see people get killed by drunk drivers, and that scares me that you're still willing, and it's your store, and you're willing to do that. So I have a major problem with that. It scares me.
I worked for a long time, like cashier and tobacco store before. I don't have anything happen like that before.
Yeah, I will say, I don't have any other questions. I just, as the owner of your store, I have concerns there too. Like our member Amanda stated, regardless if your systems are down, you should still be looking and checking. That's my suggestion, every ID to ensure, and know the date that, they're eligible to purchase alcohol, period. Because your employees are going to follow your lead. You're the owner.
Yes.
So if you're not checking IDs, they're not going to either, and you're going to find yourself back here again.
Yes.
Any other questions from the board?
No?
Okay, as I think a lot of you have pointed out, Sharif was just here approximately a month prior to this sting operation, and we're all well aware that he was asked and told that make sure you're not selling to minors, because we do that at every single hearing that we have. He did not check the ID intentionally. He doesn't really have a reason why he couldn't check the ID itself and look at the date and determine if the date was made the person 21 or 20, regardless of if his electronic system was working or not. Therefore, I would ask that the owner's beer permit be suspended for a period of 2 weeks from February the 14th to February the 28th, pursuant to a municipal code 8223 3A. I would also ask that in the alternative to the suspension from February 14th to February the 28th, that he be allowed to make a payment before February the 14th in the amount of $2,500. I know that $2,500 is the maximum amount that this board can cite someone for. However, in this particular case, given the close proximity of when he was in here and supposedly had read our rules and regulations, and then 1 month later, he doesn't even check the ID of an individual, I think that we really need to send home a message that this is not something that we're joking about, and that if you're going to sell to minors in this town, that there will be consequences for that. So again, I would ask that it be the $2,500 fine in lieu of the suspension, or the suspension from February the 14th to February the 28th.
All right, you want to make a motion? Go ahead.
I motion that we suspend the permit for 2 weeks from February 14th to the 28th, or in lieu of this suspension, that the defendant pay $2,500 prior to February 14th.
A second.
All right, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, you may take your seat, Sharif. Thank you. All right, our next hearing is permit 00536, held by Rock Springs Market. Who is here to represent tonight? Okay.
Good evening,
Hello.
ladies and gentlemen of the board,
Good evening.
Mr. Hennessy. I'm Jack Britton. I'm here to represent the owners of the Rock Spring Market.
Okay. And if you'd like to, you can have a seat right here in the front row, and we'll get started. Yes, thank you.
I'll call as the first witness, Detective Sergeant Elstrand. Instead of going through his credentials every time, since we've already done that, with the board's permission, I'll go ahead and skip over that part and start with, on or about November the 16th, 2021, did you have the opportunity to go to what is called the Rock Springs Market located at 2124 Rock Springs Road?
Yes, sir.
And what happened on that day?
Sir, we provided a confidential source with $5 in U.S. currency and sent them into Rock Springs Market to purchase alcoholic beverage. The source went in, purchased the alcoholic beverage. Their ID was not checked. came out of the store, we recovered the beverage and cited the clerk.
And is that store located within the town limits of Smyrna?
It is, sir.
I'm going to show you a photograph and ask you if you can identify this for me. What is that?
That is a Mango Rita.
And is this the alcoholic beverage that was purchased from the Rock Springs Market?
Yes, sir.
Do you know that beverage to contain alcohol and to require someone to be age 21 to purchase it?
Yes, sir, I do.
Same question to you, sir. Was there also an auto recording of the individual when they went into the store?
Yes, sir. And I apologize for not saying that whenever we send someone in, there's audio recording, and a live recording, and it's also saved, so we can monitor what's going on.
And Detective Sergeant, is the individual that you sent in 20 years of age?
They are?
Those would be my questions for the detective.
And just to be clear, and I apologize if I missed this, Detective Elstrayan, was the person asked for the ID?
They were not.
They were not asked for the ID. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Detective from the board? No further questions.
We'll turn it over to Mr. Gritton if he would have any questions.
Yes, sir.
At this point, that'd be all of our questions for the detective, and we'll turn the floor over to Mr. Gritton.
Ladies and gentlemen, my clients are appalled that this happened. As I'm certain most of you know, this is a relatively new market, representing a major investment in Smyrna by my clients. It's a long project coming to fruition. This was an isolated incident. They take this very seriously, and I want to impress upon the board that my clients, in a remedial manner, have taken to using software with their point of sale that scans all state IDs. So it registers birth dates and actually prints it now right on the receipt. And the machine will scan all state IDs. Will not scan things like passports. However, they'll be prompted to put in, or they are prompted now to put in birth dates from documents like that are not auto-scanned. The system prints a management report at this point indicating every single transaction that takes place where a birth date was keyed in, so that the management has the opportunity to review this and make sure, by way of example, that nobody's randomly popping in January the 1st in some year to make it work. As I say, my clients take this very seriously, and they are committed to this not happening again.
I would just like to say that, you know, even though the software that you're putting in is probably one of the most effective ways to do so, that they're also aware that it's not foolproof. They're still going to have to make sure that the picture matches up with the individual.
Yes, sir.
Otherwise, I could send my son in with my ID and he's walking out.
Yes, sir.
You know, and
They
that's,
understand.
So, you know, even though that's good software to install, it's still not foolproof, and they have to do their due diligence as well.
It's a tool only.
How long has the business,
Market's been open about a year?
Yeah, about a year.
About a year.
Would the owners like to testify as to these questions that may be more appropriate?
Would the owners like to testify, step up to the podium and speak if we have questions
If you have
directly?
any questions, I can answer them.
Sure, you can come up to the
Okay.
podium. That's fine.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Om Patel, O-M Patel.
And I'm the manager there at the store.
So I hear, and I do have a question. I hear that you take this very seriously, but why weren't they ID'd?
I asked the employee that question, and his reasoning was that another vendor was there, so he was checking, make sure all the items were there, and he said he forgot to ask the ID. That's what was his reasoning. So he said he's not good multitasking.
What was the action taken with the employee?
I told him that he need to do like Well, I checked on him for quite a bit of time, make sure he's checking all the IDs, and he did. So I even checked the cameras, like if I'm in the office, and he would check all IDs.
Do you tell your employees to check every single ID, regardless if you have the
No, no.
scan or the
Right.
point of sale?
Right, as long, if I see a beer, I make sure, like in the cameras, that the IDs are being checked. And obviously, not being sold to a minor.
So I'll ask you the same, because I did hear about your new scanning capabilities through the purchase of sale, point of sale rather.
Right.
What will you and your employees do at your establishment if that goes down?
If it's what?
If that goes down, if it's
Oh,
inoperable?
they still need to check it manually, make sure the face matches with the
The
ID.
date and
Yeah,
the
right.
person that's standing there trying to purchase the goods,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Exactly, yes.
You said you guys been selling alcohol for how long?
About a year, yes.
Any other questions from the board?
You said the employee's still with you.
Yes.
All right, no further questions?
I have no further questions as well.
All right.
Just briefly, while I commend them on taking the step of getting the system that requires the scanning, I will note that the employee who is the offending employee is still there. We did not hear anything about any additional training that the employee received, other than the fact that the manager is now watching over his back. And from this case, the employee didn't bother to ask for the ID, so if he doesn't even ask for the ID, then he can't scan it to begin with. For those reasons, I would ask that the owner's beer permit be suspended from a period of 2 weeks, from February the 14th to February the 28th, or that pursuant to 8223/3A, that in the alternative, he be allowed to make a payment before the 14th day of February in the amount of $2,500.
All right, I'll make a motion.
If Mr. Gritton
Oh,
has
sorry.
anything to say to that, he's more than welcome to.
Sure, absolutely.
Nothing to add.
All right, I'll make a motion that you may choose either the suspension from February 14th through February the 28th, or in lieu of the suspension, you may pay the $2,500 by February the 14th.
Okay.
I'll just
I'll
ask.
second.
All right, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. You may take your seat.
Thank you.
And actually, they're free to leave if they,
Oh, yeah,
if they
okay, I'm
want to.
sorry. Yes, you may leave. I apologize.
And the first gentleman as well.
All right, our third hearing tonight, permit 00503. This is the Shell on North Lowry. Do we have representation? All right, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Derek Howard. I'm here to represent these individuals tonight in front of the board. They're present in the courtroom, or in the city council meeting room. He'll be ready to speak at the end, if you want to just have a seat until the end.
Okay.
But
Okay, board, I would call as the first witness Detective Sergeant Elstrand. Detective Sergeant, on or about November the 16th of 2021, did you have the occasion to go to the Shell station located at 33 North Lowry Street?
Yes, sir.
And what happened?
Sir, we provided a confidential source with $5 in U.S. currency. The confidential source was age 20. They were advised to go in and purchase alcoholic beverage. They did go in and purchase an alcoholic beverage. The ID was checked. Well, the ID was asked for and shown, but they still were able to make the purchase. The ID used was the actual confidential source's ID. It was a Tennessee driver, or a Tennessee driver's license. They made the purchase, brought it out. We secured the beverage from the confidential source.
Okay, I'm going to show you a photograph and ask you if you could identify this for me.
Lime-A-Rita?
Is that the alcoholic beverage that was purchased from the Shell station?
Yes, sir.
And do you know that beverage to contain alcohol and to require someone to be 21 years of age to purchase it?
Yes, sir.
No further questions.
Detective, the employee was unable to discern on the ID. What type of ID was it?
It was a Tennessee driver's license, ma'am?
So it was a Tennessee driver's license. And that shows clearly on there that they are not 21, they are underage, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions from the board?
I have a question that I meant to ask in the last case. So I was reading through some of the paperwork here, and there were the establishments that you guys went to, are they known to have a reputation for selling to minors, or were they just randomly selected out of?
No, ma'am. We went to several establishments that night, and basically we started at Rock Springs in Old Nashville and just kind of worked a big loop back onto Lowry and hit several large commercial places like supermarkets, a liquor store, and numerous gas stations on the way.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board for the detective? No. All right, no further questions.
Mr. Howard?
Detective, Mr. Fry has asked this question the last 2 times, and I'm going to take it from him this time. Was this by recorded?
Yes, sir, it was.
Audio or video?
It was audio and video recorded.
Do you do the video yourself?
No, sir. The confidential sources carrying equipment that videotapes. The video a lot of times is not so good because it's moving.
Right.
But the source carries a AV and we just monitor.
And have you reviewed that audio tape prior to tonight?
I have not.
But the employee in this case did ask for an ID or driver's license?
Yes, sir.
And out of curiosity, do you know what that CI's birthday is?
No, sir, I don't.
You don't know if it was close to November 16th,
No, sir, I don't.
but it would have been in the same year that they would have turned 21.
They are still 20.
Right.
So probably,
Okay.
but
I mean, you're not sending in someone like this young man in the second row over here with alcohol, right?
no, it's
It's somebody who
a
looks like
legitimate
that good
20-year-old.
21.
Yes.
Okay, those are my questions.
I have nothing further for this witness.
All right. I have nothing further from the board for you, detective. Thank you. And you can take the podium now. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a business that's been established for quite some time. Mr. Patel has operated under his business license since, under his beer permit since when?
2017.
So he's been there quite a few years. This is the first instance that has come up with this, especially with this particular employee. He's taken steps, albeit remedial, to alleviate this kind of activity in the future. He takes it very seriously. There's a program that you have installed as well
Yes.
now that requires,
The scanning too with it. So, and plus we are sending him for the training in Murfreesboro.
and that's something that's already set up.
Yes.
And so now any beer sales will have to they'll have to look at this.
They have to
ID.
check the ID for any other ages, no matter what. They have to go through each customer's ID.
And does that work with tobacco sales as well?
Yes.
And the machine scans the ID?
Yes.
And how long has this employee been with you?
2 year.
Has he been a pretty good employee up until
Yes.
this?
Yep.
And as such, you're trying to train him so that this doesn't happen
Yes, that's
again?
what we're putting another training for him.
And you intend to monitor this in the future?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions.
I do, thank you. In your training, do you show your employees, maybe even specifically this employee, what, a fake ID could potentially look like, or what an underage ID that clearly shows that they're under 21? Because my concern is that they asked for the ID, they were shown the ID.
Yep.
It clearly says that this person is under 21, and they still sold this person an alcoholic, the beer or beverage. So in your training, do you show visuals of what a valid ID looks like?
Yes, it's going to be, and they are doing all the beer ABC people doing this training, so that's the reason we are sending to him over there to get trained.
And I will ask the same of you. I'm hearing a lot about, point of sale tonight, and I think that's great. It's another level of security. But it all comes down to your employees being able to look at a date and seeing if it's valid on a driver's license.
So what it does on the scanning, if it's not a valid driver license, it will not let us sell it. So if it's expired ID, it will just gonna cancel the sales.
And I'm sorry if I could interject. That same program, it won't let him ring up alcohol unless it's scanned.
Nope, yep, mm-hmm.
So if it's someone that present an ID and the date is not after 21 years old, it won't even ring the alcohol up, is my understanding of how it operates.
I just want to clarify as well, your attorney stated that the person may have been close to turning 21. Are you telling your employees that if they're close, that
Nope.
they can sell?
Nope, we don't.
Okay, so that's not an option, correct?
No, no.
Because the
It
point
has to be
is they're
21.
underage,
Yep,
right?
it has to be 21 and up.
Correct. Doesn't matter if
Nope.
it's in a week.
Nope, if
A
it's an
month.
hour, if it's a
Right.
day, no, we can't.
Thank you for confirming that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the board?
And we're still looking at the ID to make sure that the person is that person.
Yes.
Ms. Swift, my purpose for asking that was they're not sending in someone who's obviously under 21. It's someone who could go, if you were just looking at them on the street, you could say, hey, they're 25 or they're 16. Had nothing to do with their training whatsoever. I apologize for that.
No problem, but, that's a slippery slope, looking at people and trying to guess their age. So I
Oh,
just
I
wanted to
would
make
never
sure,
recommend that.
just wanted to make sure for the
In any
record.
circumstance, alcohol sales
Yeah.
or anything else.
Yeah, my recommendation is to ID everyone.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. The clerk who was working that day, he's still employed by you?
Yes.
Was he not arrested for a number of things other than selling alcohol to a minor on this day?
Yes.
And he was actually had warrants and was extradited to some other state?
Excuse me, sir?
Did he have warrants, or were you aware that he had warrants out of the state of Tennessee and was actually extradited to some other state to stand trial for his charges?
Yes.
Are you aware if he's pled guilty or not to selling alcohol to a minor?
Yes.
And not only did he, I'm sorry, strike that. He also was found to have at least 2 grams of marijuana, a grinder, a pipe, and rolling papers while in your employ?
Yes.
No further questions.
And that he's still an employee of yours?
He, like we are right now, that we are working on it to what we have to do after the further step with it. But whatever we're gonna have an employee, they're gonna get trained by the beer, ABC people. But we're not sure yet, he will be back into the store or not.
Do you perform background checks on your employees?
We don't, but we are starting back, we are gonna start doing it from now on.
If the person's pled guilty already to selling to a minor, are they still legally able to keep selling beer? Sorry, counsel,
I don't believe that they would be able to, no.
And do we know that, has he pled guilty to this charge in court? Do we know that?
Not that, the only thing I've seen is where he was charged with it here in Smyrna. And as for any other charges, we don't know anything about any extradition or other charges. The only thing we've heard about was the sale to a minor and that simple possession charge for just a little bit of marijuana. What the status currently is, I don't know. And I don't know if he's been to court, and I'll say this because I represent Mr. Mansour too. His clerk has not been to court on his case yet.
I would recommend checking that very closely, that if he is found guilty to have sold to underage, that he probably is not allowed to
No.
work at your establishment to sell beer.
Yeah, that's the
So
thing.
the
He
training
won't be
would be
back.
futile at that point.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I believe also under our ordinances, if someone has been convicted of selling alcohol to a minor, that they would not be allowed under our ordinances to sell within the town of Smyrna. And that was partly the reason why I asked the question, considering that we know that he's continuing to keep this person in his employ. If there's nothing further, I would go to closing and state that, as we've discovered that, it's great that they have now put in a system that will allow them to scan these IDs as most people have done tonight. However, that doesn't negate the fact that the individual actually looked at this person's ID and still continued to sell the alcohol to them. So at the very least, we can say that their training prior to November the 16th was lacking. For that reason, I would ask that the owner's permit be suspended for a period of 2 weeks from February the 14th to February the 28th pursuant to 8-223-3A. I would ask that in the alternative, that they be allowed to make a payment before the 14th day of February in the amount of $2,500.
I make a motion,
If Mr. Howard has anything
sorry.
else to say.
I would just ask, given this particular situation and the fact that if he's able to sell beer in the future, he's gonna go to this training. If he's not able to sell beer, they're gonna get rid of this employee anyway. We've also put in place programs to train new employees with the ABC board, as well as the software that would prevent any sale whatsoever without physically scanning this driver's license, which means the clerk's gonna have to take it, look at this person, scan it, hand it back to them, and then we've got the fail-safe of the computer system as well. We just asked for the least alternative as to the suspension or the fine. I know the fine can be up to $2,500, but it doesn't have to be.
That's the board for a motion.
I make a motion for the defendant to decide whether or not they would like their permit suspended from the 14th through the 28th, or pay the fine of $2,500 by the 14th.
I second.
All right, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. You all may leave if you'd like.
If you want to step it, sure. I'll be out in a few minutes.
All right, our next hearing is permit 00567, Stop and Shop Tobacco and Beer. Hi.
Me again. Represent Mr. Hani Mansour. Represented he and his family for many, many years. He'll be ready to speak with yourself just as soon as we get finished.
I would call Detective Sergeant Elstrand. Detective Sergeant, on or about November the 16th, 2021, did you have the occasion to go into the Stop and Shop Tobacco and Beer located at 901 Rock Springs Road, number 125?
Yes, sir.
And what happened?
Sir, again, we provided a confidential source who's 20 years of age with $5 in with $20 in U.S. currency, with instructions to go in there and purchase an alcoholic beverage. The confidential source did go in and purchase a confidential beverage. No ID was asked for or checked, and the transaction was all video and audibly recorded.
And this store is located within the town limits of Smyrna.
It is, sir.
I'm going to show you a photograph and ask you if you could please identify this for me.
Is Sex on the Beach, sir?
And is this the beverage that was purchased by the confidential informant?
It is, sir.
And do you know this beverage to contain alcohol and to be a beverage that requires someone to be 21 years of age to purchase?
Yes, sir.
Those would be my questions.
Any other questions from the board? We have no further questions for Detective.
I don't have any questions. He answered Mr. Fry's question in his direct that time, so.
I would turn the floor over to Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Hennessy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an establishment that's been in this family for many years, I believe 15 years, if I'm not mistaken. And maybe I should have asked the detective this, but going back through the years, we have a number of letters sent from the Murfreesboro Police Department, from the Department of Agriculture. They used to do these stings, and when they would send folks in to try and buy alcohol, if they were refused, they would send out a nice letter that said, "Hey, we tried to buy alcohol from you, we were refused, thank you for doing your job." Mr. Mansour has provided me letters going back as far as, let's see, 2014 on these, to where they have prevented these types of sales in the past. He's been operating this store since, I think, 2017?
Couple of years.
Unfortunately, Mr. Shahada, who is the clerk that sold on this particular day, unfortunately had gone that morning and had a root canal and had been prescribed some medicines that he had not taken before. Not trying to put that off on him, but he is actually one of the clerks that in the past has refused to sell on these undercover stings. This particular day, he was on some medications and it just slipped his head that day. He has not, his case has not been adjudicated yet through the court systems. I believe that comes up in about 3 weeks. Mr. Mansour has, if you want to come forward, likewise installed the software. We've got training programs that we're looking to send all their clerks into to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And I want to reiterate the fact that you've got at least, 6 letters
Yes.
from the past where they have successfully denied these undercover stings where they weren't able to purchase alcohol. Mr. Shahada, the clerk, unfortunately that day wasn't about himself and didn't do it. There's really no setting aside. He didn't check, and he was the first one to come to Mr. Mansour and tell him, I didn't check him. I just didn't do it. What we put in place is a mechanism that should prevent this in perpetuity as far as that goes. And rather than sitting down and getting back up, we would ask for a least restrictive alternative here rather than a 2-week suspension or this $2,000 fine.
Is this clerk still employed at the shop?
At the time being, we've discussed his employment. He's not to be selling alcohol until we've adjudicated his criminal charge. I will say this, I have personally dealt with the DA on this case already. I anticipate him being put on what's called a diversion program, which is essentially, we're going to set this charge aside based on the circumstances. We're not going to prosecute you. You stay out of trouble for 11 months and 29 days. This case will be dismissed and expunged from your record as though it never happened. While that is an informal agreement, it has not been reduced to writing or entered into the court yet.
What is the timeline on the training? You said there's training coming. What's your urgency there? When is that rolling out? And tell me what it entails.
Training as far as what? Like, have training for employees now?
What type?
You've been training them in the past.
We've been
but you-
training them, yes.
She's wanting to know about what the new steps are.
The new steps, we upgraded the system, the point of sale that we have. So now, every time they scan any kind of beer, they would have to put in the date of birth on the system, on the point of sale.
What happens if the system's down?
They would have to check it anyway. They would have to see the ID. They have to see. They've been having to see the ID all the time. That's what we've been doing. That day, what happened to this guy, he checked some ID on the same day, and I have pictures of other IDs that he checked on the same day. But as Mr. Derek said, he was on prescription, and I'm not trying to justify what he did. He's been with the family, or working with the family for almost 5 or 6 years, no issues. Actually, he refused to sell in the past. What happened this time, as I said, he was on prescription the day before the incident, which was November 15th. And I even looked up the side effects of the prescription, and it causes, and as I said, I'm not trying to justify what he did. He made a mistake. I'm liable for it. He's liable for it. But as I said, the side effects of the prescription, it would cause some kind of confusion and, not being able to be 100% able to work. And maybe because the can that he sold, it looks pretty much like some energy drinks, like the Monster or those kind of energy drinks, and maybe that's why he got confused. I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know what happened, but as I said, he's been with us for almost 5 or 6 years, no issues, and we never tried to do this for profit. If he made it, it was an honest mistake, and I would love to keep him if possible, to be honest with you. He's a good employee, an honest employee, and that's what I told Mr. Derek when we met with him.
Did he work his whole shift that day?
Yes, sir. But he didn't mention anything to me that he wasn't able to work or he was on prescription. He didn't mention anything.
And he has proven to be a reliable,
Yes.
employee throughout the years.
Yes. And we've been in this location for about 15 years. We have other locations in town, never had any issues. Because as I said, we never do something like this for profit. I wouldn't do it. We even have like tobacco sales. They send underage kids to buy tobacco. We have letters, thanking letters that, they send to us that say, thank you for not selling even tobacco, not just beer.
And when you say we wouldn't do this for profit, I think what you're trying to say is you wouldn't sell to a minor just to make money.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. As I said, it's an honest
And
mistake. That's what I'm
that's
trying to say.
every
Yes,
store that
yes,
you
in every
operate.
store, yes.
Well, and I appreciate the backstory, and the context around the state your employee was in. But you as the owner should be telling your employees too, that if they're not in a capacity to work, they shouldn't be.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, this reflects on you and your business.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're here today because they made a bad decision.
Yes,
Okay.
sure.
Any other questions from the board? No further questions?
Well, I will commend the Mr. Mansour on what appears to be their track record. I've not seen those documents, but he had several documents there, and I know Mr. Howard wouldn't present something that wasn't true.
Well, and I apologize, without rules of evidence, I don't know what I can present to you or not. I have several copies, if you guys want to look at them, I have several pages that you're welcome to look at. I'm just at a loss, I'm used to following certain set of rules, and without any rules, I don't know what to do.
Well, like I said, I'm not accusing them of not having those.
Sure.
I've known Mr. Howard for several years and don't think he would present something to this board that was not truthful, as he knows it. I commend them also on getting the new system in place that will hopefully assist and make so that there's not this issue in the future. However, that doesn't negate the fact that there was a lapse in judgment on November the 16th of 2021. And for that reason, I would have to ask that the owner's permit be suspended for a period of 2 weeks from February the 14th to February the 28th. However, pursuant to Municipal Code 8, 223-3A, I would ask in the alternative that Mr. Mansour be allowed to pay a civil penalty up to and including $2,500.
Would either of you like to make a statement before we make a motion?
No, ma'am. Please, I said no, ma'am, let me ask you.
That's okay.
Hopefully, I don't have to pay that much. With the competition that we have in that area of town, it's really gonna hurt us, to be honest with you. And as I explained, I've been doing it for 15 years. We've been in that location for 15 years. So hopefully, we can get some kind of mercy on us, on this. Since it's the first time in 15 years. We have other locations, never had any issues. So I think from my standpoint, I shouldn't be treated like we've just been open for a short period of time, since we've been having that long and good history.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll ask the board for a motion.
Thank you very much. I make a motion that the defendant either have their permit suspended from February 14th through 28th, or in lieu of suspension, pay a civil penalty of $1,500.
I second that motion.
All right, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion approved. You all are free to leave too if you'd like. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's see, our last hearing tonight is permit 00541. This one's held by Discount Tobacco and Beer, Nimri Market.
We would be moving to dismiss this case. That particular business has been sold, and I believe in January, the new owners of that establishment came in and got their beer license or beer permit.
Okay. Do we need to make a motion to dismiss that, Eric?
Please.
Okay. I'll make a motion to dismiss the public hearing for the permit 00541 for Discount Tobacco and Beer as change of ownership.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, at this time, I will open the floor for any other new business tonight. All right, seeing that we have none, let's go ahead and set our next meeting for March. I have March 7th, 2022 at 5 PM. Everyone okay with that?
Sure.
Any reports from officers, committee, or staff?
That should be a short meeting because we won't have any hearings that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right, I will just ask for a motion to adjourn.
I motion that we adjourn.
Second that motion.
Well, we're closing our meeting at this point. Should we open or?
I mean, if he would like to ask the officer, the board has already made its decision in his case. So there's
Correct.
nothing further that would come before the board in his particular case. If he would like to speak to the officer after this meeting, and if the officer would like to speak to him, then they're more than welcome to do so in the hallway.
Okay, you can speak to detective, okay? After our meeting. All right, we just ask for a motion to adjourn.
I second that motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned, thank you.